Good evening and welcome to the Cover One Buffalo podcast. You are joining your host Greg Tompsett along with my partner in crime Aaron Quinn. Aaron, how we doing?
What's good, man? Buffalo Bills are back at One Bills Drive. That's pretty.
I saw pictures of football players playing football.
Yeah, the draft felt so long and just tedious, and then boom, like close my eyes and guys are back in nice helmets with white face masks and all these sexy
visors.
Pictures. Josh Allen's wearing a visor. Like football's back, baby.
So I always know when it comes to like off-season planning and stuff like that, I'm like, man, there's so much time. Honestly, today, I laid out all of our shows from now until training camp and the position previews. I had to squeeze a couple together because we're already so far in. It's this successful football and going into the playoffs is a great problem. I would like to deal with this for a long times to come. Backing up our schedule is great. It's
absolutely
a good problem to have.
Yeah, for sure.
So speaking of which, we will be diving in starting next week in our position preview series, breaking down each position group on the team all the way from now up until training camp, going through the strengths and weaknesses, new additions, starters, starting position battles, roster spot battles, all the different pieces on Brandon Beane's trade list on cut down day, all the things that come into it. But tonight we are going to do one last look at the Buffalo Bills 2021 draft class. And, Aaron and I talked about, we did some work on Greg Rousseau. We knew some stuff about Boogie Basham. But as it got later, it was some tough names and some guys we hadn't had a chance to do a lot of work on until their names were called by the Bills. So we thought, how else to dive into the expertise of these late round picks and the UDFAs and these draft diamonds than the man himself, Damon Talbot, the man behind Draft Diamonds. Damon, how we doing, man?
Hey guys, how you guys doing?
Good. Thanks for coming out.
Yeah, I appreciate you giving us a little bit of time. Why don't you just tell the folks a little bit, for anyone who isn't aware, the at Draft Diamonds and the whole crew over at Draft Diamonds, you've built yourself an incredible platform to help so many of the guys that maybe don't get the attention of playing for Bama and Clemson and all the things that go along with it, but end up carving out awesome NFL careers. How did you go through kind of building up the idea of this and turn it into what it's now become?
Yeah, well, first off, we basically started off scouting HBCU college football players, black colleges. I was actually given an opportunity to work with Eric Gelko, who's now with the Shrine Game, Optimum Scouting. I actually worked with him for quite some time. He gave me the opportunity to start with HBCU football players. As I started digging into it, I realized that nobody was talking about these other divisions, FCS, D2. There was only one other guy, Josh Buchanan, at the time. And I said, hey, that'd be kind of cool to dig into that a little bit further. And I just started digging, and next thing you know, I was finding guys all over the place. And I was given an actual opportunity to scout with NFL scouts, and at the Raycom All-Star game in Alabama with Mike Hagan, who was a former Denver Broncos and Cleveland Browns scout. He gave me an opportunity to come on board with him, and man, it was intense, and I was able to see everything up close and personal, and it blew up from there. And then next thing you know, I started Draft Diamonds and went on my own with it, and I'm so thankful I did, man. I get to help guys that, like you said, that are under the radar, but they can play. You know what I mean? And there's definitely guys that we're finding every year that, obviously NFL teams are going to find them too, but it helps when you have somebody else putting the name out there too, especially in a season like last year with COVID.
How is that work as you've evolved and having watched you evolve through Twitter and watching you grow? It must become easier now over time where I would think players are starting to reach out to you to get the word out, where instead of trying to find people. How has that been in that transfer of, trying to find diamonds to taking in, people saying, hey, use your platform to get my name out there? How has that transition been?
I'm going to be honest with you. We started off back about 5 years ago with a rankings list of like 200 players. We can't even call it a ranking list anymore. We have to call it a watch list because we're up to like 900 small schoolers on a list. And as well as I do, that 900 guys aren't getting an opportunity, but each one of them has a trait that definitely could turn over or translate to the next level. So what we want to do is at least put their name on the paper. if a team's going into one of these schools like Truman State or one of these small schools, they're able to go in there. They can pull up our list. They say, hey, look, Draft Diamonds watch film on these 5 guys. Let's pull them up. And then they can pull them up, interview them, break down film if they like them. The coaches will even recommend guys to the teams. But we basically started this watch list for them. But, yes, it does get a lot easier because not only do the players reach out to you, the schools allow you to get their film, which is so much easier than trying to dig in and find this stuff.
The all 22 black market is something I was not familiar with, short of working with Eric. That is the battle for those clips is crazy.
Our very own Rob Quinn, I think, used to trade like old 2003 film for other film. He was trying to get his hands on stuff, so he's collecting.
It's hard.
Yeah.
As we, kind of dive in here, we had planned on going through and first starting with, some of the later picks. But before we get into some of that, I didn't even really think about it. All the attention in the lead up to the draft was on Quinn Miners. And don't get me wrong, when you have an offensive lineman pulling his jersey up and running around with his belly out, it's going to get people's attention. It was fun, but going through and ending up with a guy that I don't think was on a ton of people's radar other than, he's some big, tall athlete. When did a guy like Spencer Brown start to catch your attention?
Well, his coach told me, but he came to UNI as a 0-star player. He walked on. I mean, tight end, not the biggest guy. Played other sports. He gets there and. My cousin Ryan, check him out. Yeah, man. But, at the end of the day, it blows up because he calls me up and says, listen, man, this dude's in the gym. He's putting up stupid weights. I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, sends me a video. I get a video of this kid. He's benching 500 pounds. We're not talking about a 5'10 guy benching 500.
With crazy arms.
We're talking about a dude with 82-inch wingspan putting up 500. That's ridiculous weight. Now, if you go and you look at the UNI weight room, them guys are like, there must not be a lot to do in Iowa. I don't know. I'm not saying that, but they all are like freaky, athletic. Ellerson Smith was athletic.
Yeah.
The kid coming out next year, Jared Brinkman, he's a mammal too. Animals. I can't even explain it. But Spencer Brown was a kid that after about his sophomore year, the coach said, look, man, if we can get him up to what we need to get him up to, this kid's going to be a beast. And I just started watching him there, and he just pulling. They pulling a tackle and getting him in front of running backs. And then when he hits you, he stands over you like, what? You know what I mean? Like, that's the type of offensive lineman I've always liked. That's why I like the Quinn Miners, too. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But definitely you're talking about a football player that has the attitude, has the tenacity with it, is a freak athlete. Probably, I think he had the fastest 40 time of anybody.
Yeah, I know. Depending on where you think about the relative athletic score and the way that those guys do that, he was the highest relative athletic score in history at offensive tackle. Since 1987, the highest relative athletic score of any tackle ever. It's insane.
Well, you got to think about this, too. He played D-end and tight end in high school. This kid had 17 sacks his high school year. It's not like he's not athletic. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, this is an athletic dude just transformed into an NFL body, and he's not a fat, sloppy kid.
Yeah.
Right.
He's an athletic offensive lineman, and I think that's what the Bills love about him. And they're getting a hell of a player.
Yeah, on that topic of him, but more, I think you might have tweeted it out right when the pick happened. I've seen it a few places, but the picture from UNI of when they came in and just like skinny rails with Brown and Ellerson Smith, and then the 2-year progression or whatever it was of how they were able to put weight on these kids, and that got me thinking kind of even before I knew you were coming on the podcast, and now that I have you here and you get to talk to some of these schools. I think oftentimes as fans, we look at these schools and we just think of them as these low-tier schools that the players are at some major disadvantage throughout the entire process, right? But it's not true. These schools have great facilities. They have great teams that can get them ready and transform them into the players that we saw those two particular guys take and, up their draft stock. How competitive are those lower level schools now when it comes to facilities and coaches and training? Like, it's grown so much over the last 10 years.
That specific conference in itself is probably really competitive. That's where North Dakota State, Illinois State,
Right.
they're in a huge, very competitive area. So they put a lot of time in. Plus, when you're looking at schools like North Dakota, like South Dakota, them schools are all them areas have. So everything gets put back in there resource-wise. So them schools are kind of the disadvantage per se than a lot of other schools that are smaller. I'm not going to say every small school has this great advantage, but for them schools themselves, like you and I, and then you got to look at coaching as well. I mean, we're talking about, they have former NFL players coaching. Bryce Popp, former Buffalo Bills, the D-line coach at UNI. So, I mean, you're talking about a guy who knows how to get there, knows what to do and how to do it. So these guys are learning from professionals. So, I mean, a very long. I don't know how many years he played in the NFL, but he played quite some time.
Oh, yeah.
He
played at a high level.
Played for Packers, I think, for a while too.
Packers, and then obviously Defensive Player of the Year with his first year with the Bills.
Right.
Yep.
Interesting. So let's jump into why we brought you here, because we, like Greg said, we went through that first half of the draft, and obviously I think a lot of people had fun with the 6th round because you have 3 picks, and you finally get into some of the sexier positional groups that people wanted. But I don't think a lot of people had guys on their radar here late in the draft. At least I didn't when I was going through Draft Network or any of the mock drafts. None of these names were guys that were coming up for me with any type of consistency or any guys that I was really honing in on late in the draft. Obviously it gets harder. So I've done some work since then, but I want to get your view on some of these guys. Let's start in that 6th round. Marquez Stevenson, Damar Hamlin, Rashad Wildgoose. Are these guys that were on your radar for the Bills going into the draft? And just kind of give us how you see them fitting. Are these guys going to make an impact and make this team?
Yeah, I think they'll all make the team, to be honest with you. And I say that because you have to value what you have, especially when they're draft picks. They're paid cheaper. You don't want to cut them because obviously they have the value. I think when you're at a team and you have draft picks like this, if they didn't want to keep the guy on the team, they would have traded up and had lesser picks to try to go into it. I think that there's value there, and they all like him. I can tell you right now, Stevenson's he'll end up being the starting kick returner. I would be shocked if he's not. You're talking about a guy who played the position in college, was explosive at it, had a 4.44 40 at his pro day. He catches. They use him a lot like Isaiah McKenzie. That's who really needs to be on the lookout right now, because that's who he's going to take the job of potentially. Andre Roberts leaving is a huge gap, and you can see they tried doing a lot to try to find a way to replace him and they did. They signed Powell from the Falcons. They signed a bunch of different people because they're looking for this kick return.
Brought in a bunch of workouts, right?
Exactly. Yeah, I think they have their guy, and I think he fell to him, and I think it's gonna end up being all right. I don't think Powell will be here. I think Stevenson's the guy that's gonna be the main kick returner, and I would not be shocked if in the first year they keep him in that kick return role, but next year he's replacing Isaiah McKenzie in that role, and that's what I think is gonna happen with him. When you look at Damar Hamlin's gonna fill in the Dean Marlowe role.
Yep.
Marlowe leaving, Hamlin's gonna come straight in. They love pick guys. Yeah. The Buffalo Bills love Pittsburgh, especially in the defensive back. I had Hamlin rated.
It's a smooth transition, right?
Yeah. Absolutely, and it's the same. I mean, you really look at that transition. It's Dane Jackson's going to be an animal,
right?
Exactly. So he's going to transition right in. Hamlin's going to be a beast in the Bills system. I don't think he's going to start right away. I don't know where, but he'll be in the Dean Marlowe role. If somebody gets hurt, he'll be in there.
Marlowe played 250 snaps last year, so
that's a lot.
Anytime you have Poyer and Hyde, you're thinking, oh, the safeties don't play. Dean Marlowe played a lot of football. Like, he was on the field consistently.
Totally.
And then when you go to Wild Goose, I think he was the last one in the 6th, right?
Yeah.
That is just an extremely feisty football player. In your face, punch you in the mouth type football player. Every time you're coming off the line, he's trying to hit you. I think he's going to get penalized a lot. I do at the next level, because he makes a lot of contact in the initial 5 yards. I don't know, but I think feistiness, he's going to bring that.
Right.
He's going to be competing with a UDFA. to make this team, in my opinion.
And here's the thing about that. Like, I agree with your setup on that, but you've watched a lot of guys play football, and a lot of the guys that need to make a name for themselves, right, and get noticed by a team. I don't have a problem with that feistiness in a rookie because I feel like you can dial some of that back, right? You can teach technique. You can add some,
absolutely.
You can't, like, I stick up for Levi Wallace a lot. He lacks that, right? Like, he lacks that feistiness, and there's nothing any coach could ever teach to instill that type of dog in a player. So having a guy that's a little bit of a dog that you have to refine and dial back, that I'm totally willing to take that in the 6, because those guys just, the game has become so much about finesse and athleticism and stuff that the dogs get lost because they are projects.
Well, and you talk about what matters to a Sean McDermott, what matters of, people get frustrated that, hey, why didn't we go spend a top pick on a corner? Why didn't we spend big money on a cornerback? And by people, I mean me. But when you're going through, and obviously they have a type, and you look at the way that Taron Johnson goes up and always throwing his body around, and the aggressiveness Dane Jackson plays with, and even though Wallace isn't as outwardly,
he's a good tackler, right?
He's a sound tackler, and then just fighting for a walk-on at Bama, a UDFA in the pros.
Totally,
it just shows the kind of guys there, and that Wild Goose dropped because of the inconsistency in the tape, not because he's not a good athlete, not because he doesn't have the willingness. So if you give me the opportunity that, hey, maybe the coaching style and the ability to get the best out of players, if you can harness a guy who wants to do that and maybe has a little more of the physical ability, maybe there is a little something there.
Yeah, he's tough. I'm telling you, I don't know. You watch his film and you're like, oh, he's going to get penalized. I just see him getting
for sure.
It's going to be a big play and you're like, oh, come on, Wild Goose. He's just going to do something. I just had that feeling on him. But like you said, you can't teach that. You can't teach that, somebody hitting you in the mouth. But he's going to go for the ball.
Yeah, I say the same thing.
The type of ball,
when it's not a penalty, it's the breakup when the guy's coming down with the ball and he punches it out between the hands and stuff like that. That's valuable too.
Yep, I agree.
And now Wild Goose, before we get over to Jackie Anderson and I hand you off to Greg, with Wild Goose, he's got some positional flexibility here too, right? Being able to play outside, inside, a little bit of safety. Where do you see the Bills using his skill set early on to try to get him into this rotation?
Special teams.
Yeah.
Anytime you have a guy that's that aggressive, put him on the outside and let him go down the field. Because on kickoff or whatever you need. You got to remember something. Every NFL team keeps about 6 to 7 guys just for special teams alone. Wild Goose is a guy that you can take him and mold him into what you want, and he can get rid of maybe a guy that has a bigger contract that maybe, they can fill in another void. Like Tyler, what's his name?
Oh, Medikevich or Taiwan Jones.
Neal's going to be coming up soon too on special teams. He's going to be out of his rookie deal here.
Tyron Neal, right? Yeah. So maybe that's the guy that you come in that can replace and get down the field. The first thing though, they have to bring special teams value. If you can't bring special teams value that late in as a corner or a D-back period, teams aren't going to want you. I mean, you have to have something that you can contribute right now. And I think that's when you have an aggressive guy, you got to send him down the field and let him try to hit somebody.
And so I agree. Go, 1 second, Greg.
You're good.
This is too important. I have too good of an idea. So, because the last time when we were talking about it, I see Wild Goose as a guy that, we're talking about how you slowly fill in. That's kind of what we're talking about here, right? Filling in depth. And I think Taron Johnson coming up on his contract is going to be a real big point for the Bills, especially with some of the big money we were talking off air with Allen, Tremaine Edmonds, guys that they're going to have to pay. Do you see, is that his ceiling would be to maybe make them feel comfortable enough year 2 to move on from Taron? Or is this a guy that you don't think that can fill in that role? Maybe is that the future nickel guy?
You know what? I guess I'm going to have to see him in that nickel position, even if it's just for a few snaps before I can make that decision. Sure. I can tell you, Taron Johnson's going to get paid.
Yeah.
Whether it's with Buffalo or not, he made some of the
many snaps.
Crucial, but he made some of the most crucial damn plays for the Bills this year. Yeah. That pick 6 was, I mean, come on. I think all of us screamed. It don't matter if you were watching it, you screamed. Yeah. But he's going to get paid. And I would like to say, I hope he can replace him. But that's going to be some big shoes to fill right then and there. If
we can talk about Taron all night if you want.
Yeah,
Aaron will talk about Taron the rest of the show if you want to go down that path.
Listen, I would pay him because it's so hard to find a solid slot.
I agree.
I mean, I would, but I mean that's me.
Yeah, I agree with you. So let's talk about 7th round, Jack Anderson. Everybody just says he looks like Richie Incognito. Nobody assumes that we're going to see anything really of him. What would you make of him, though? What do you got to tell fans about Jack Anderson?
Once again, versatility. He's going to have to step it up. Never played the position that they want him to play. I think they're going to want to play him at center. They're going to want to see him play center and guard. He played guard his entire career. I think every single start he had was at guard. At Texas
I think every
Tech.
single one was at right guard. I think it was
right guard,
literally the one position.
Just one position.
Right.
So versatility is going to be huge. Now, the thing is, you take a guy like him because obviously they've seen something in him. They must feel like he can translate it. Maybe that's a Bobby Johnson type pick. He likes them mauling type mean guys. Jack Anderson, I wouldn't say he's the meanest guy, but he definitely has some FU attitude. And if he does kind of look like Richie Incognito. You can't even lie. That dude's like, to the T, he looks like him.
Yeah.
But he's not Richie Incognito right now. I mean, not even close. But if he can end up playing center, now you keep him. Absolutely, you keep him. But like I said, late round guys, they have to have something versatile, at least for me to keep you.
Right.
If I have Ike, I can't even say the guy's name. Bacher, whatever. If I have him, he can play both positions. Why am I going to let you keep his spot when, you know what I'm saying? If that's whose spot he's coming after. To be honest with you, it's probably Ryan Bates. Yeah. Ryan Bates' position to lose at this point with them 2 tackles being brought on. I would say it's Ryan Bates because I think he was our backup center. I don't know if they have Feliciano plays there too. They have everybody. But at this point, I would say Ryan Bates is probably the one that would be they kept that position. So they're going to want to see Jack Anderson come into play both areas. If you know what I mean, that would be my assumption.
Yep. Makes sense to me.
So you look at whether it's the versatility or when we were talking about the special teams ability, you know, I think people underestimate, and we spent so many years as Bills fans getting enamored with the fun UDFA story. And then some of them mattered. Some of them ended up being real. And you had, you know, Duke Williams making the roster. And previous to that, you know, Chris Hogan was legit. Like, he ended up being a good player. And and Levi Wallace has turned into a starter. So sometimes we go overboard in the amount of players that we love. But every once in a while, we do hit. We hit on one that's real and that ends up being a genuine contributor with a long NFL career. It's going to be tougher now with the contracts and the way that the Bills roster is getting deeper and more talented and more talented. There's fewer spots for them to take a flyer on a UDFA. And you add in, Brandon Beane doesn't like to cut his draft picks. And the only ones, if you look back, you made a perfect point on the day 3 picks. The only 2 draft picks who haven't made the roster are Austin Proehl and Voshon Joseph because they couldn't play special teams. And they hid Joseph's situation with what was going on. But if he was killing it and camp and ready to play, you know, he wouldn't have been hidden on IR.
He's not even on a team right now.
Correct. It hasn't, you know, and obviously, especially at linebacker, depth linebacker, special teams is your life. So now switching over to this year, there are some names that, you know, I think it's interesting. You talk about Brandon Beane said he's getting phone calls from agents where, hey, we don't really want our UDFA to come sign with the Bills because your guys' roster's too good. Nobody's going to be able to make the team. We're going to send them to Jacksonville because we might make that squad. Who are some of the names that do stick out? I don't know that it's likely that a UDFA makes it this year, but you never know, and there are roster spots up for grabs. Who are a couple names that stick out for you that maybe there is a shot to take a stab at a roster spot?
You guys are going to think I'm crazy, but I'm going to go out on a limb right here, and I'm going to say this guy makes the 53. All right? Period. Point blank, makes the 53. It's going to be Nick McLeod. And that's the guy that probably not a lot of people are talking about. NC State kid, transfers to Notre Dame, plays 1 year. Statistics weren't amazing, but the kid's 6 foot, 4'4", 40, long. I mean, outside corner his entire career. Goes to the Hula Bowl, leaves with the MVP, picks off 2 passes in the Hula Bowl. Not afraid of going up against top talent. Obviously, at NC State, his top talent was Tyree Brady. You know what I mean? At Marshall. Shut him down. He goes up to Boston College, shuts down Boston College. You go back and look at the athleticism and the play he made against East Carolina. I want to say it's 2018. Ball gets thrown deep. He tips it with his left hand, pushes the receiver down, snags the ball, runs down the sidelines, and goes up the sidelines like 30-some yards. Most ridiculous, talented play. Buffalo Bills need corner depth. Bad. And I get it. They have Wild Goose. Wild Goose, to me, is a special teams player for the first at least year, maybe 2. I think Nick McLeod is the guy that comes in and can make the roster right now with what they have. I know that may be a reach. I know he's a UDFA, and we always pump UDFAs up. A lot of people are pumping up Quentin Morris and them. Quentin Morris fell out of the draft because he's only 6'2". Everyone has him at 6'5". Bowling Green has him at 6'5" on their website. He's 6'2", and that hurts him. Yes, he can run good routes. Yeah, but he's more of a Reggie Gilliam at this point.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So that's basically where he would be. He's more of an H-back than a tight end. So to me, he has a long shot of making the roster. You have the Griffin kid.
Yeah, Elijah Griffin.
Elijah Griffin. That's another feisty corner. And obviously, you're seeing a trend here. They're trying to bring somebody in. He's extremely feisty, always around the ball, hasn't played a lot, left his junior season left early to come out. Obviously didn't go the way he wanted, probably wanted to be drafted, but is he a type of kid that can make a roster? I think he's a great practice squad kid if you can get him there. Like I said, I think obviously 32 teams passed on him in the draft. I think he could be a practice squad type of guy. I don't even know who else they signed off the top of my head. Somebody.
Some people like
Cyrus.
Yeah, that was the other one I was going to say. Cyrus Utele was the other one that people brought up as a name.
It's funny, man. Cyrus, right when the draft ended, he texted me, "I'm going to your Bills." I'm a huge Bills fan. He knows that, and he texted me to let me know he's going to the Bills. But Cyrus is an interesting prospect. You're talking about a right tackle his entire career, but they just drafted 2 monster right tackles. So was this like, I don't know what this is. I think it'll be a shot in the dark to make the roster, but he definitely can play. Will he get kicked inside? I don't know. He's never played inside. So we don't know. That'll be a project type thing. Maybe versatility around the ring. Tarek Thompson. Yeah. Listen, let me tell you something. He was a guy too at San Diego State. His freshman year was probably the best freshman year you'll ever find on film at safety position. You got to go back and watch his freshman year. But the sad thing is total tackles declined every year going out, which is that's not something that you usually see. His 40 time was a little suspect. I want to say in the 4.7s. Not bad, but not great. That's probably why he didn't get drafted. But I'm going to tell you something about Thompson. Thompson's always around the football. 12 picks in his college career. Yeah. Listen, you got to look at his forced fumbles and his fumbles recovered. I think
people compared him a lot to Jaquan Johnson, where the athletic attributes don't make sense with how many plays he made.
You know who he reminds me of is former Buffalo Bill, the Oregon safety.
With Boyd or Jarris Bird.
Jarris Burton, similar type athlete. Well, not athlete, but similar type player. Always around the ball, trying to strip the ball out. Things that you want to see in a UDF type in any type of player. I want to see any player ripping for the ball, especially on a defender. But I think he can be taught a lot of the things. Athleticism's not there, but he could be a guy that could definitely make this roster. It just depends on what route they go. How many safeties are they going to keep? Is Jaquan Johnson going to stay? We know he can play special teams. Right. You know what I'm saying? We know Saron Neal's there playing special teams. You got to remember this. The guys that were playing special teams, how much money are they making?
Right.
Yeah. Cap
space right now, it does play a matter. It's going to play a role. So if I can get a guy who can come in and replace somebody for $570,000, and we have a guy making $1.5 million, that's saving me bread. I got to take the UDFA if they're on the same type of playing status. If they both can do the same thing.
And again, I think this comes down to this idea, and this is something our friend Bruce Nolan has kind of talked a lot about, of building for the future, right? And how you acquire assets and look to the future, where a lot of these undrafted guys and even the late round guys, we're talking about filling in spots on the roster, but it doesn't necessarily have to be for 2021, right? Like that, you have the practice squad to then fill in for your Saran Neals as cap tightens, and you can't bring in these guys for their second contracts. That's where you have to fill in these roles. That Jaquan Johnson comes up off of his rookie deal. You have to have that role with somebody in your system that knows the scheme, is in your building. That's why the practice squad exists. This list of names we're talking about, I don't personally, I wouldn't bet on any of them necessarily making this roster, but I think a lot of them are going to be available for the practice squad. And I don't think anyone that I have on the Bills practice squad is a guy that I feel like they have to keep, right? Like all those spots are open. Are any of these guys, do you think, who's going to be the guy from camp that everybody's talking about? He has to make the roster because we can't let him slide through because he's going to get taken. Because usually what Greg and I have talked about, usually doesn't get taken. You can usually get these guys back, but we know Bills Mafia is going to fall in love with somebody.
Oh, they always do. It's going to be Warren G's son. I mean,
it is. It's hard not to yell regulators. Like
I know. I mean, dude, he makes a pick or something. I mean, look, man, it's game over. They're going to be, I really think, though, I'm telling you, you guys think I'm crazy. Listen, I'm a huge UB Bulls fan, and Cam Lewis is a great kid.
Yeah. And he stepped in well before he got hurt.
Heck, he took Taron Johnson's starting job and then he started the game. he started the game, and then with 12 snaps in, gets hurt, and we never get a chance to see.
I like Cam Lewis, but I think he can be replaced. Here's the thing: I think at the end of the day, I don't put anything past Brandon Beane. I think Cody Ford could be traded. I think secondary members of the secondary could be on the block. I could honestly see the Buffalo Bills swinging a trade for Zach Ertz. I call me crazy. I think they could do it, I think they would do it if the price was right.
Yeah. Well, we really appreciate it, man. This is a ton of fun. Before we get you out of here, Damon, tell the people, what you have coming up, what your off season is like. Do you get an off season with all the texts and phone calls that you get? What does it look like as you're getting ready for the season here?
Well, I'll tell you, we're basically, we work on a database behind the scenes, which a lot of people don't see. The database is consisting of small school football players all the way up to the FBS level. We start collecting phone numbers and emails and contacts and information, and we build out this huge database. And that database is basically sent out to all 32 NFL teams. It's free to them. I don't charge them. And it's all their background information. It's anything. My whole point is with Draft Diamonds is to give the kid a player to at least be on the desk of a football team. So at least you're getting your name is there. Whether they want to look at it or not, I can't force them, but I guarantee you I can get it on their desk. I've been contacted by teams already that are, hey, look at this guy. What do you think of him? Giving me guys to add to my list that aren't on my list. And that's really how it started off. And that's really what we do all year long. Our list right now, like I said, we have 900 small schoolers, 674 FBS players. So we're getting there. What were we going to say about?
Yeah, you say, right, you give them out to the NFL. Is that also with other leagues, CFL, potentially if the XFL comes back, and these other spring type leagues? Are you also trying to get players involved in all those?
Absolutely. Listen, if you're a professional football team, whether it's indoor football league, arena, whatever it is, if they're on our mailing list, which they all are, we send it to them all. Yeah. Then they have the access to look at these. A lot of them will go to pro days and different things, and they're able to see the guys. You know what I mean? So all the guys' information, we collect it. There's guys that don't want to give you any information. That's fine. Obviously they're like, why do you need my information? You're going to spam email me. I don't email you. I don't care about none of that. I collect your stuff because NFL teams use it. And at the end of the day, I mean, it's really became a huge tool. I'll give you an example. Former GM contacted me. I'm not going to say his name. He said, you don't realize how valuable you are. You give it to us for free. He said, I fired 4 scouts one year because you did all the small schools for us. So you saved this team almost $180,000. And I'm like, well, damn, you could, busted me a check for
donation something else.
Bought me some pizza,
we take contributions.
Listen, a pizza log shipment from Buffalo, you could have shipped it to me. Like, I'm not asking for much, but damn. But now I realize how valuable it is. So I might have to start charging them something, $10 or something.
Something.
Dinner.
PayPal.
I'd work for Pizza Lugs. I'd work for Pizza Lugs.
I would too. I mean, you send me pizza.
Bar bill, gift certificates.
All right, man. Well, thank you so much. We appreciate it. It was a ton of fun to be able to talk. We'll have you on again sometime.
Hey guys, I just want to tell you this, man. Keep doing what you're doing, man. You guys, I love what your guys' content. It's amazing. And you know what? From me to you, I know it doesn't get out there a lot, and I know that the fans, they nag you and they harass you. Well, actually, they harass me too. But keep doing it, man. It's amazing content. And as a Bills fan living in Florida, I look to you guys. You guys are my go-to. So keep doing what you guys do, and I appreciate it, man.
Thank you. That means a lot, man. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
very much.
Thanks for having me on, too.
Thanks again. Everybody, make sure you're checking out at Draft Diamonds. Make sure to check it out. It's awesome. I follow it, especially when you get into draft season during college football, the guys that you're not always looking at. It's a fantastic way to find out about other players and guys you don't always have on your radar. So, couple things here, Aaron, before we wrap up. There's a handful of little tidbits that came out today. In my realm of the nerdy part of the world, it was announced that the 2022 salary cap, the ceiling was placed at $208.2 million. For anybody, I mean, it's just nonsense numbers for a lot of people. Most people were guessing it was going to be closer to 200 to 205 million. So 208.2 was a little bit higher than what people expected. It was a little bit more. So I think that goes along with, right now it was announced today, every stadium is expected at 100% capacity. Almost every franchise has sold out their season ticket allotment. There's a lot of excitement. There's expectation that every revenue stream, all the jersey sales are up like crazy. I think there's a lot of people, all of us, whether football is where you spend your expendable money or not, people are ready to go do stuff. People are ready to go out and get back out into the world. And it is the ceiling. It is not a guarantee that it's going to hit that number. I think it's a very high likelihood that the cap will be 208.2 next year. And for a team as talented as the Bills, with as many contracts as we have, and that does include already paying guys like Josh Allen's 5th-year extension and the 5th-year option also for Tremaine Edmonds, that 208 is great. It gives us $7 million in cap space. It's a little bit better than what we expected. So it's every dollar helps.
We can bring Levi back again. To me, outside of the numbers and the cap ramifications, it just goes to tell you, I love seeing indicators that talk about the health of the league, right? Because we get a lot of information. You have, when the Anthem stuff was going on and people say they were going to boycott the league and the impact that was going to have on the league. Well, 6 months later, the league was still having all-time high. Like this product that they put out, this entertainment product they put out, is just so good. And as soon as I had seen that they were even considering stadiums being full for this year, that we were going to have training camps and stuff this year, I immediately knew that we were going to start seeing a bounce back for the projections of the league going forward, and that this last year was truly a hiccup. We're not going to have huge ramifications from it going forward, and get us, God forbid, some other disaster happens. It looks like the health of the league wasn't long-term impacted by anything that happened over a catastrophic year, and that's a great indication for everyone going forward.
For Lone Wolf's comment, that would be the scenario there, that it could be lower. It would take something unforeseen, a fallback from a society standpoint, that we have some other issue come up, honestly, most likely COVID related, that something we're not expecting, that impacts people can't go to games. That would be the big chunk that would draw it back. Want to say thank you, Greg Tompsett. Thank you very much, man. I really appreciate the contribution. So now with that cap space, we can now go out and trade for Julio Jones. It's very exciting. So
interesting.
Obviously, I've been asked about it literally 50 times in the past week that it's come up. I did go through, you guys can go out on my feed. I did explain technically how it's possible. At first I couldn't. I actually spent about 20 minutes where I couldn't get it to work because the Bills have $3 million in cap space and the man makes $15 million. You can restructure his contract. You can get his cap number pretty easily down to $7 million. You restructure Deion Dawkins. You probably do a pay raise and restructure for Stephon Diggs because he'd want some more money if you're telling him that you're bringing in Julio Jones. You could make it work, and that technically, if you offered Gabe Davis and a second-round pick and something else, is that in the running? Probably. That's probably the ballpark of what they're going to be offered. The fact that you'd need to give up one, maybe multiple young pieces, one, maybe multiple valuable draft picks that we need that cheap contract, and you'd have to stretch out other things kicking, that his $15 million and we only have $3 million in cap space. I can make it work to cover that $12 million, but I'm just kicking that $12 million into future years, and the cap didn't go up that much next year, and you're having those other things coming. So for me, it's fun to talk about. I get the fodder. If they make it happen, I'll be excited and I'll cheer for Julio Jones like everybody else.
Totally.
I don't think it's going to happen, and the reason is young players and draft picks and cap space. It's just too much to try to fit a guy like that. I would be shocked.
Yeah, and I this is a tough one for me because I love it. I love Julio Jones, the player, obviously.
Yeah.
I would love to add him to the team. It's a little Madden-y to me to think that it would be something that Brandon Beane is really even considering pulling on. I'm sure
Especially at maybe our most talented position.
Yeah, and here's the thing. Does Julio Jones make a difference to any team that he goes to? Absolutely. He's one of the best players at his position in the world. This is the same conversation that we talk about with the improvement of Dawson Knox. There isn't a ton of ball left to go around. There is a slight improvement that this offense can make from the historical unprecedented offense that we saw in 2020. I don't know the amount that it would cost you to get a player like that, to the type of return on investment that you're going to get from adding just another over-the-top star. That ball can only go to so many guys. And yes, maybe somebody can get hurt. It's good to have that amount of talent. I just don't think that the investment ultimately is worth it when there are legitimate holes on this team that need to be filled with that future. You're looking ahead. If they don't pay Tremaine Edmonds, that's a huge hole right in the middle of the defense that you're not going to be able to fix if you go out and get a Julio Jones. It would be you have to win the Super Bowl in 2021 in order for this to make sense. And I know Brandon Beane's a gambler, but I don't know that he's that much of a gambler where this is the kind of move where if it fails, he gets fired for stuff like that. You take a team that's projected to be in the AFC Championship game, trending towards a Super Bowl, and you derail it with one move if it doesn't work out. They've just built everything so methodically. It's just not a shot I think they would take. So I actually muted Julio Jones 4 or 5 days ago because I can't even deal with the conversations and the arguments for it.
Yeah, and the comment I kept making to people is all the time I spent working out contracts, explaining the numbers, all the different things. I would have felt a lot better about it if I was explaining why we were trading for Khalil Mack.
Sure.
Or why we were trading for there are spots where Julio Jones plays a premium position. He's an elite player. He's the kind of guy that makes it, like I said, he's the kind of guy that every Bills fan listening to this right now saying, we don't need him. Don't worry about that. How are you going to feel if he goes to Kansas City?
Sure.
You're immediately going to be mad if he goes to New England, if he goes to Indianapolis, if he goes to the Chargers or a team we're going to be fighting in one of these spots. We're not going to be happy. So you care how good he is because you can just answer for yourself how you're going to feel if he goes to Miami.
Right.
As those things happen, of course I'd be excited if we had him here and had that. But like I said, it's probably our best position on the roster. We've joked before where we have 9 or 10 NFL caliber receivers and 4 or 5 really good ones. The difference of him versus he would take basically both Gabe Davis and Emmanuel Sanders snaps. He's probably better than the two of them combined,
Definitely.
but not that much better. It's not some huge drop off where, you told me, oh my gosh, we had a way of trading for Darren Waller. And all of a sudden we're adding an elite guy at a position we're not strong at. Or Khalil Mack, or maybe even Von Miller, or whoever it might be. An elite player at a position we're
Jalen
not
Ramsey.
super... I love him as a person, but I'd figure out a way to add him to the roster.
Right.
But yes, that kind of thing, if you're telling me we get to add an elite player that we have to do cap gymnastics and give up draft picks and give up a young player, but we're getting back an elite player at a position we really could use an injection of talent, then I will go and do all the machinations and all the gymnastics to make it work.
Yeah. And I do think Julio Jones has plenty left in the tank.
Oh, yeah.
I think we're already spending too much time talking about Julio Jones with the Buffalo Bills show, though. I think he has plenty left in the tank. I think he's on the wrong side of 30 too for that type of game-changing investment. This isn't a Stephon Diggs who's just getting into his prime now, where you make a big deal and you trade for a guy that's still ascending. This just doesn't seem like the type of risk to take. If it was out on the free agent market, sure. If it was, hey, this guy's an aging guy and his value is just kind of depreciating and maybe you can get a few years out of him, no. He's still elite. He's going to have an elite 2021 season for whatever team he goes to. I just don't know that the Bills are in that position to pay for that, because you talked about it. What's he going to take? Emmanuel Sanders, Cole Beasley snaps. You're just replacing those guys that are already old who need to be replaced with the youth that you have that you're going to have to trade away, this youth at receiver that you're hoping to funnel in. You're really just kicking that can down the road, because he's also going to be a guy that you're going to now have to fill in 2-3 more rookies to replace as Stephon Diggs ages out a few years after that. So it gets real sloppy. It sounds good. It would totally work for fantasy football, Madden, things like that. I just don't see the Bills as players in this. I think there's going to be too many teams that are making phone calls and are interested and are willing to outbid, that both have more cap space and more flexibility, because they're not in necessarily win now Super Bowl mode. We're not, New England is a great example. They're not getting ready to pay
cap as much.
Yeah, they're not getting ready to pay their quarterback top 3 QB money in the league where the Bills are. So a lot of those things, and the reason the Bills are in the position they are, it makes it so getting a guy like this isn't. 5-6 years ago, Julio Jones comes on the market. I'm all for it. Let's get on Twitter and talk about it, because the Bills are crappy and we need something to give us a spark. I agree with you. I don't want him to go to Miami or any of these other teams, but I don't need him in Buffalo. Like, I don't need to spend any more time than we've spent on this tonight talking about it, because it's not something I need. I don't know that it makes the Bills great Super Bowl contenders for what it's going to cost them.
Yeah, all Bills fans, you can join me in wishing him well, reuniting with Kyle Shanahan in San Francisco.
Yeah, I'd love for him to go to that.
Yeah, NFC. That's my guess. I would love for him to go there, make everybody happy, keep him away from anybody we have to compete with. Go over there.
Yeah.
So as we wrap things up for tonight, I mentioned at the beginning of the show, we will be diving into our off-season position previews, and just special for you, we are going to lead off next week with the cornerback position, so we can talk about Trey White and Taron Johnson and all your favorite humans.
I thought we were going to go with the punting conversation.
Puntapalooza.
I like my Puntapalooza.
I do like punters. So when I mentioned about squeezing, I had to shove specialists into another position group tonight, because it couldn't even be their own show. So as we get ready for things, make sure you're going out there. We made some awesome additions to the roster over at Cover One recently. There's going to be an article probably as you're listening to this. It's dropping for anybody listening live tonight. Tomorrow morning, Rob Quinn did a fantastic breakdown of some of the comments Josh Allen made in the presser about the in-breaking routes and the things he's working on. Awesome write-up. And Rob is an amazing talent to welcome back to the team. Along with Rob, we brought back Colin Salagi, and Kyle is a great talent as well. Already broke down the presser right as it came up. You're going to get to see his writing talents, as well as a new content intern, Liam Kearney, and just excited to be able to bring more and more to all of you guys that spend time and energy with us, and really ramping things up. We're going to have a free preview here for a while, and then we're going to be able to really bring you the best in premium content. So wherever you're checking us out, go to cover1.net, check out our subscription memberships. You can join us in the Cover One Slack channel, which is a fantastic value, and now adding on to that all the great content you're going to get with the written stuff on the website. So come on over, check us out, give a rating, give us a subscription, give us a like, give us a review. It really helps us out a lot. Aaron, how can the people find your good works and all the wonderful things you say?
Yeah, real quick, I want to touch on Rob. First of all, we're not related. People ask us all the time.
I'm sure.
Yeah, we're definitely not related. But I love this guy. I've been on Twitter for a long time. I've been dabbling around in content creation and kind of in with some of these folks for a long time. And Rob is hands down one of the best that does it. He is one of the best around when it comes to that community of people that work with. Even when I wasn't working with him at Cover One, he was always just super willing to answer questions, help, share his views on things. I've been DMing with this guy for a long time. I was so happy when he came back to us and ready to rock with him this year, because he just makes this. You haven't had a chance necessarily to work with him for a season. It's a lot of fun. He puts out a ton of great content. The takes that he has. So if you're not already following him, which I hope if you've been on Twitter for the last 10 years, you
Rob
already
Quinn,
following
Rob Quinn 619. Anybody who isn't.
A great follow. A person that I haven't actually met in real life, but met on Twitter, and I consider a real friend. So happy to have Rob back, and I just want to take a second to honor him and coming back to cover one because I love it. So other than that, you can find me at AaronQuinn716, and now that Rob's back in all his mentions.
Yeah, obviously. So looking forward to it. Going to have a lot of great stuff for you guys. Really appreciate you guys checking us out tonight. And now we're going to take you through every single position on this Buffalo Bills roster, leading you all the way up to camp. We'll be here with you every week. We appreciate it very much. On behalf of Aaron Quinn, I'm Greg Tompsett. You have been listening to Cover One Buffalo, and we are out.